Hi, I'm Tim with LJB, and welcome to our rooftop. We're here today to see a demonstration of LJB's approach to fall protection. Now, with me to my right is Paul, our worker. Paul's job today is to service a camera located on the edge of the roof, as you can see over there. We need to keep Paul safe while he services that camera. So walk with me over to that camera and let's take a closer look. Now, as you can see, this camera is near an unprotected edge on the roof. Don't worry though, we're safe. We're in a virtual environment, so we're not exposed to the fall hazard. Now, Paul, on the other hand, he has to service his camera. So we need to protect him while he services the camera. Now, at LJB, with our approach, our first choice will be to see if we can eliminate the hazard altogether by perhaps moving the camera in away from the unprotected edge. We've decided that can't be done. Our second choice would be to use some sort of an engineering control. Perhaps we would move this guardrail over here closer to the edge, to the camera to protect Paul, or maybe use an aerial lift or something like that, or some other engineering control to protect Paul. But we've decided we can't do that either. So that leaves us with an active fall protection system. As you can see, if you take a look at Paul, he's wearing a full body harness attached to an energy absorbing lanyard. He also has in his tool bag a 50-foot vertical lifeline. Using this personal protective equipment, Paul's going to find a suitable anchorage somewhere here on the roof to tie to while he services the camera. That's our job today, find an anchorage for Paul. So I want you to take a few minutes to look around the rooftop. Look at some of the objects here on the roof and identify if any of these objects would be a suitable anchorage for Paul. After you've done that, click the button here to my left on for the next video, and you'll see how LJB would approach selecting an anchor point for Paul. Hi, it's Tim again with LJB, and welcome back to our rooftop. If you watched our first video, you know we're here today to help keep Paul, the worker to my left, safe while he services the camera here to my right. Specifically, we have to help Paul find a suitable anchor point for the active fall protection system he's using. In this video, we're going to talk about how LJB would go about selecting an anchor point for Paul. Now at LJB, when we design active fall protection systems, we follow the ANSI C359 fall protection code. As a matter of fact, LJB has led the development of that code for many years. Now, when you think about ANSI and OSHA, or the law relative to fall protection, you really need to think about two considerations. One is engineering, and two is safety. And at LJB, many of our fall protection professionals are credentialed both as professional engineers and as certified safety professionals. That means we take both engineering and safety into account when we design fall protection systems. If you only focus on one, either just engineering or just safety, you're really only solving half the problem. In addition, at LJB, we don't manufacture or distribute fall protection equipment. That means we're unbiased towards selecting specific equipment when we design systems. We solve the problem or design the system first, and then select the right equipment. So, what's this mean relative to selecting an anchor point for Paul? Well, let's talk about that. Now, when we apply this approach at LJB to selecting an anchor point or designing a system, let's think about it in terms of an analogy of a chain, or specifically the links in a chain. Every link must work, right, for that chain to do its job. So when selecting an anchor point, there's really 5 links we want to talk about. And you're probably thinking about the first one, or you probably thought about the first one when you went around earlier looking for an anchor point, and that's strength. And we're going to talk about strength. We're going to get back to strength, but we're going to talk about that one last. Let's go through the first 4 before that. Now, the first link in our chain is access. In other words, can the worker safely access the anchor point to connect and do his job? Now, talk about access. Let's look at the anchor right here to my right. Now, this anchor might seem like the right choice for Paul to use to service this camera. I mean, it's right here. It's convenient. But if Paul were to walk out here near this unprotected edge and connect to this anchor point, he's going to be exposed to that edge while he connects, and that's not a good thing. Paul might actually fall over the edge while connecting, and that's not going to be a good day for Paul. So for this particular anchor point, access is an issue. We probably wouldn't want to select it. So that's the first link in our chain, access. The second link in our chain is clearance. And to talk about clearance, let's walk over here by the guardrail, or specifically the anchor point by this guardrail. All right, fall clearance. And there's an anchor point right here, and of course the camera's over there. Now clearance means is the worker, if he falls using the system, is he going to have enough clearance to prevent himself from striking an object below or the ground? And part of clearance is swing fall. In other words, when the person falls, they're going to actually swing. Now in this case, if Paul services the anchor over there while connected to this anchorage, he's going to of course be using a long connecting component in order to get from here over to that anchor point. And if Paul falls, of course, this anchor is going to pull him back close to the anchor, close to this anchor. He's going to swing along the side of the building, probably striking something along the ground, maybe one of these cars in the parking lot or something like that. And of course, that's not going to be a good day for Paul. So for this particular anchor point over here, swing fall is an issue. Now the third link in our chain is the human factor. And to talk about the human factor, let's walk over here to Paul. Now, if you look at Paul, you see he's wearing a bunch of personal protective equipment. He's got a harness on, a lanyard connected, some other items. Now, when we talk about the third link in our chain, human factor, we have to think about, does Paul properly know how to use this equipment? In other words, does he know how to fit the harness properly, connect the connecting device, things like that? Also, did Paul properly inspect that equipment to make sure it's going to work properly? So those are just a couple of the human factors you need to consider. Now, when thinking about human factors, of course, that's consistent for any of the anchor points out here, but it is an important consideration you always think about when designing an active fall protection system. That's our third link, human factor. Now, our fourth link is rescue. And to talk about rescue, let's walk over here to the corner of the rooftop and look at the anchor over here along the wall. All right, our fourth consideration is rescue. Now, if a person falls while using an active fall protection system and he's suspended in a harness, you need to have a plan in place to get that person down quickly or promptly. If not, some bad things are going to happen medically to that person. We're not here to talk about those things today, but believe me, some bad things are going to happen to that person medically. So, when using an anchorage like this or another one, you might want to consider using a connecting component that actually allows them only to get up to the work surface or rather close to the edge without going over. And if Paul adjusts his lifeline properly and only allows him to get to the work edge or the roof edge, then he's not even going to have to be rescued because he's not going to be able to fall. In that case, Paul's going to be using a fall restraint system or something we might call or liken to a dog leash. Now, if you use an anchorage that actually allows a person to fall or a fall arrest system, again, you need to have a plan in place that allows for the person to be rescued promptly. Again, if not, some bad things are going to happen to that person medically. So rescue. Rescue is our fourth link in the chain. We talked about access as our first link. We talked about clearance as our second link. We talked about the human factor as our third. And of course, rescue is our fourth. Now that brings us to our fifth link. Yes, you got it, strength. And to talk about strength, let's walk over here near the wall by this pipe. Now, earlier, when you were looking for appropriate anchors for Paul, you probably saw many of these yellow anchors on the rooftop or along the wall, the anchor points along the wall. And those look strong. Those look like there's something Paul can connect to with his active fall protection system. And you might be right, those might be appropriate, might be strong enough. But you really can't assume that. Don't ever assume. If these are appropriate anchorages for fall protection systems, that they would have documentation that says they are. So that's really the key. You need to look for each specific anchor point and look at the documentation. The documentation will tell you what material the anchor point's made out of, how it's connected to the surface below, like in this case, the roof, things like that. It will describe specifically that anchor is designed for a specific load or the potential or intended load of the system. So you got to have documentation to make sure the anchor is strong enough. Now, some common mistakes people make is they use things like this steel pipe or this conduit along the ground or maybe this white PVC pipe, and they think, well, that looks strong, I can use that. Well, don't make that common mistake. Those are not going to be strong enough, and they're certainly not going to have documentation that says they're strong enough. That's what to think about when you think about strength. So again, the 5 links in our chain relative to selecting an anchor point for Paul. Again, the first was access, the second was clearance, the third was the human factor, then fourth we had rescue, and finally, last but not least, strength. Those are the 5 links in our chain. I hope this video was useful. If you have any questions, LJB's contact information is here on the board. Please give us a call. Thanks for watching and have a safe day.